As 2025 ends, we look back on a decade since a significant moment in British history. On June 23, 2016, the UK voted to leave the European Union, 51.9% to 48.1%. Brexit set the nation on a new path, leading to years of political discussion and change. Prime Minister David Cameron resigned, followed by Theresa May, who was unable to secure a withdrawal deal. Boris Johnson became Prime Minister in 2019 with a commitment to get Brexit done and won a large majority to pass his revised agreement. The UK formally left the EU on January 31, 2020, entering a transition period that ended that December. The EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement, finalized on Christmas Eve 2020, established a new relationship, free trade in goods, but with new customs checks and regulatory requirements. The services sector, which makes up 80% of the UK economy, received less comprehensive coverage. The UK was now outside the EU's core economic structures, and the effects began to appear. 5 years after the trade deal took effect, data and analysis are available to assess the outcomes. The campaign's rhetoric has faded, replaced by the examination of economic reports and trends. It is now possible to compare promises to outcomes. This report examines the economic and political developments that have shaped the UK in the post-Brexit era. We'll analyze the data and explore what it reveals about the country's progress. The UK is now considering the results of its decisions. The story of Brexit is now about measurable impacts. The next chapters will be shaped by decisions made in response to these findings. The UK's future is being influenced by the lessons of the past decade. The discussion has shifted from leave or remain to what now? The consequences are clearer, and the questions more defined. The UK stands at a crossroads, with its path shaped by the choices of the last 10 years. The journey continues. The economic debate over Brexit was fierce. Supporters promised freedom from EU rules and new global trade deals. Opponents warned of new trade barriers and economic harm. Both sides relied on forecasts, but only real-world data could reveal the truth. The UK's exit coincided with global shocks, the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine. These events complicated efforts to isolate Brexit's impact. Economists developed the doppelganger or synthetic control method to estimate what might have happened if the UK had stayed in the EU. This approach uses a weighted average of similar economies to create a counterfactual UK. By comparing the real UK's performance to this synthetic twin, economists can estimate Brexit's effect. The method filters out global shocks, focusing on the Brexit difference. It's a powerful tool for understanding the true economic consequences. The results are now in, and the evidence is clear. The UK's economic path diverged from its peers after 2016. The data tells a story of lost momentum and new challenges. The next scenes reveal what the numbers show. Major institutions like the OBR and LSE have used the doppelganger method. Their findings are consistent. The UK's economy began to lag behind its synthetic twin after the 2016 referendum. The initial shock hit the pound, raising import costs and inflation. Uncertainty delayed business investment. The divergence grew after 2021, when new trade barriers took effect. By late 2024, studies estimate UK GDP is about 5.5% lower than if it had stayed in the EU. This doesn't mean the economy shrank, but that growth was slower than its peers. Business investment stagnated, lagging behind the doppelganger group. Trade intensity, exports and imports as a share of GDP fell more sharply than in comparable countries. The UK's economy became less open and less attractive for investment. The drag is persistent, not a one-off shock. Brexit's impact is visible in the numbers: slower growth, weaker investment, and reduced trade. The data paints a clear picture of the cost. The next step is to look at the details behind these headline figures. Let's examine the numbers. Since 2016, UK GDP growth has lagged behind other G7 nations. The UK's recovery from the pandemic has been slower than its peers. The OBR forecasts Brexit will permanently reduce UK productivity by 4%. Business investment, a key driver of growth, flatlined after the referendum. Other G7 countries saw investment rebound, but the UK's has not recovered. Brexit-related uncertainty made firms hesitant to invest. Even after the trade deal, questions about regulation and market access persisted. The result: older equipment, slower technology adoption, and weaker productivity. The UK's competitiveness has suffered. The investment gap is a major concern for the future. The numbers show a clear link between Brexit and economic underperformance. The next scene explores the reality of new trade relationships. Brexit promised new global trade deals. The UK signed agreements with Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and joined the CPTPP. But the economic gains are minimal, fractions of a percent added to GDP. Geography matters. It's harder and costlier to trade with distant countries than with neighbors. The EU remains the UK's largest trading partner, but new customs checks and paperwork have added friction. Small businesses, in particular, struggle with the new barriers. Many have stopped exporting to the EU altogether. Studies show a sharp drop in the number of UK firms trading with Europe. The UK is now less integrated into European supply chains, with long-term consequences for competitiveness. The promise of global trade has not offset the reality of new barriers with Europe. Brexit reshaped UK politics as much as its economy. The 2016 referendum cut across party lines, realigning voter loyalties. The Conservatives united the Leave vote in 2019, but governing proved harder than campaigning. Economic challenges and Brexit's practical difficulties have strained the ruling coalition. Labour, under Keir Starmer, now pledges not to rejoin the EU, but to make Brexit work by seeking closer ties. The debate has shifted from leave versus remain to how best to manage the new relationship with Europe. Conservatives push for divergence. Labour argues for alignment. Other parties still advocate for closer EU ties. The political landscape has been permanently redrawn. Public opinion on Brexit has shifted since 2016. Polls now show a clear majority believe leaving the EU was a mistake. This shift is driven by demographic change and regret among some Leave voters, so-called Regrexiters. Younger pro-European voters are entering the electorate, while the older Leave base declines. Despite this, there's little appetite for another divisive referendum or rejoining the EU. The public mood is pragmatic. Improve the current situation. Don't reopen old wounds. People want a better trading relationship and a stronger economy. The debate has moved on from the past. The focus is on practical solutions, not constitutional battles. The memory of political turmoil lingers, shaping today's cautious approach. The UK is looking forward, not back. The Irish border remains one of Brexit's thorniest issues. The Good Friday Agreement depends on an open border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. The Northern Ireland Protocol kept the land border open, but created new checks in the Irish Sea. This angered unionists and caused political disruption. The 2023 Windsor Framework eased some trade frictions with a green lane for goods staying in Northern Ireland. But the arrangement remains controversial and hasn't resolved all constitutional concerns. Northern Ireland now has a unique status, aligned with EU rules, but part of the UK. This is a lasting consequence of Brexit and a reminder of the complexities involved. The issue remains politically sensitive and unresolved. The future stability of these arrangements is still in question. As 2025 ends, the UK faces the consequences of its choices. Economic data shows Brexit has slowed growth, trade, and investment. New global trade deals haven't offset lost EU market access. The political debate is now about managing Brexit's effects, not reversing them. Labour seeks closer EU ties. Conservatives push for divergence. The public wants practical improvements, not more upheaval. The UK must choose between forging a new economic model or gradually aligning with Europe. The next election may clarify the path ahead. The story of Brexit continues. Its legacy will shape the UK for decades to come.